If your ink's too slow and your nib won't flow, here's one of the places that you can go. Larry is here to see you through with Mr. Announcer and Cubby too. It's Larry's Fountain Pen Reviews.
Put that on your Christmas wish list.
I'm waiting, Larry, for you to send me one.
Well, baby, I'm going to send you two just for that. Being so nice. How you like that? Yeah.
Oh, can I choose which ones I want to?
Anything you want, lady. Anything you want is yours.
That's Larry's next giveaway.
And you realize,
yeah, you know it.
and you realize, of course, this
So
meeting is being recorded, so everybody on this one
I
has
know, but
witnessed the
remember
whole thing.
remember my dementia, so forgive me. So let's go to Mike for a little bit. He's over there being all nice and quiet. So
Yeah,
Mike,
he has his mute on even.
oh, okay, Mike,
Well, it's hard to get a word in edgewise with you guys sometimes. You know, I don't jump in quite as fast as others. Actually, I still had a couple things for Kirk. You know, one thing I would say is, you know, Kirk, I'll put you on the spot. Like, so what's on your desk right now? What kind of nibs and pens do you like to write with a lot? Do you have any particular favorites you like to use right now?
Yeah.
Hey, that was a really good question, Mike. Why didn't you bring it up earlier?
I didn't get a chance.
You had your mute on. We couldn't hear you even if you did.
Well, I keep waiting for things to slow down. Okay, okay,
This
great.
is what's on my desk right now.
I had that coming. I know.
So
Okay.
I have a little bit of everything. So a couple of my favorite pens are these Ian Schoen pens. Those
Okay.
they're Ultim. I take them and I put, you know, because I repair and restore Mont Blancs, I have the great benefit of sometimes having extra parts. And so I put a Mont Blanc 149 nib in mine.
Kirk, what's the name of that pen?
This is a Ian Schoen Ultim. I forget the name of it.
Oh, for Schoen. Okay, all right.
Ian Schoen, Schoen Design.
Yeah, he does the Ultim.
You know, I have a couple. These are narwhals. One's the vacuum filler, and then one's where my camera is. And then this one here is actually my Pen Realm exclusive edition that they did for me. So, so those are on my website, but also in my pocket. This here is actually one that I picked up in Atlanta. This is a made by Hicks and Sons. This is a 14 karat pen, as well as having a 14 karat nib. It was actually made for Tiffany and Company. It has this interesting, you know, filler with a big reservoir. So, so this is actually kind of a nail of a nib. So I really like that in this pen. The other one is a Swan eyedropper.
Oh yeah.
I still can't remember where my camera is apparently. So this one's
You're right at home with those inky fingers, eh?
gold plated, yeah. So both of those pins are circa 1920s, 1930s. There's another Ian Schoen with a Mont Blanc 149 nib in it.
What is that one?
This is a Schoen design. I showed you another one. So I eyedropper them and put, like I said, Mont Blanc nibs.
He just came
And I
out
took
with
a couple of, so some of my favorites definitely are Mont Blanc. So I took a burgundy and a black and swapped the parts around. So I like doing non-destructive changes. So I can swap that back at any time and have two original pins. These are a couple Bone Crushers, Bone Crusher 7 Studios, who's a friend of mine down here in Colorado. He makes, this one's made with cholla cactus, and then this one's got some buckeye burl, and then it's got some gold resin that kind of matches my Pen Realm edition. And this is a Jonathan Brooks Urushi pen. And I don't don't ask me what the technique is called. I think it's where he uses rapeseed to make those divots. And then a pilot crane maquillé. And then, you know, one thing that some people don't know is that the sections swap on these. So actually this normally would have had a number 5 nib, but you can take a number 10 nib and swap it. And so I've got a number 10 posting nib.
What on that number 10 nib, real quick? Who makes those number 10s? Are they what?
So it's pilot. So I got
pilot.
a 742 or something like that to get, you know, or you know, so that they have different levels of maquillés. They have the number 5, which I think are called Nippon Art, and then the number 10 series, and then the, you know, and then you get into the Yukari and Yukari Royales and the Miki branding.
So what I would like to see, Kirk, is your Mike Green pen.
You know, I don't have a Mike Green pen at this time.
Nothing like
yeah,
putting you on the spot, eh?
I need to rectify that.
I think I have one. Mike. There's a Mike Green.
Thanks. No, we've talked a couple times.
Yeah, I've been very slow to collect the custom maker pens, but it's actually.
I got a bunch of Mike Green pens, so yeah.
No. Well, I guess, you know, looking at what you're, you know, again, kind of looking at what you're, you know, we're looking into what is the Nibmeister, you know, drive around with, you know. So do you
as you can see,
those are very interesting changes, you know.
Yeah, well, I have a $50 pen, and a couple of these are worth well over $1,000. So there's no
understood. Yeah,
there's no rhyme or reason as to the pins. Is once they're tuned, I like them. And so
right.
Real quick, let me ask for some help. I have forgot what the pen is. I know what the pen is called, but again, I apologize for my memory loss here. But one of my favorite all-time pens is, of course, Mont Blanc, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. It's just a favorite. But another favorite pen of mine is the Vanishing Point. A lot of people don't like it because of where the clip is. That has never bothered me. To me, it's a perfect writing instrument. Why? Well, it's so easy to use, just like a ballpoint pen. You can just click, bam, click it off, and you're good to go. So I like them. For me, they work great. Now, what I need to know is, I don't know if you can use it. What's on the barrel in the cap. Can y'all see that?
Yeah, is that a blue one?
This is a black one, and it's kind of, what would you call this?
What's the texture?
What's the texture?
Guilloche.
Is it the carbon fiber one?
Is it textured?
It's
yes.
Yeah, so the texture is called guilloche.
Guilloche. Yeah. Okay, I'll go for that.
That's how I pronounce it.
Yeah, guilloche, Larry, with the G.
Okay. Well, Doc, you should know that one because you're a Vanishing Point man yourself, if I'm correct, right?
Like it, yeah.
Yep, great pen, yeah. And I do get negative comments because I like the pen so much, but like I said, everybody's different with their own opinions. And for me, Vanishing Point has worked well from day one, 2015. And a while back, I had to sell a whole line of them that was collecting different colors to buy the pens, but I still have about 6 or 7 or 8 left. I'm not selling one of them now. End of story. Unless they want to give me one of David's pens and trade out, I'll think about it.
There you go.
So, okay, thank you for answering that, everybody. Appreciate the input. So here's one for you. Let's go back to the pilot number 10 nib because I've been interested about it. Can you put, first of all, what's the largest nib made?
You know, that's a good question. I believe that the Toma probably makes the largest nib, and I haven't measured it against the number 50 Namiki nib, but those two are incredibly large nibs.
Kirk, the difference being the Tomo is very flexy, not for flex riding, but springy, I guess I should say, even more so than the M1000 Pelican.
Right. Right. And
So
yeah,
what size, again, what size nib is that? Tacoma or whatever?
Toma. Is,
Tacoma, yeah.
Toma.
yeah. So
What size
Toma,
nib?
it doesn't have a size designation, but it's about the size or maybe slightly bigger than the Mickey number 50 nib.
And how much different would that be from the Pelican 1000?
It's probably almost double a Pelican 1000.
Nib numbering is not interchangeable.
Right.
Not
That's
every number 8 is going to have the same size.
Right.
Number 50 relative to what?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Generally speaking, the Mont Blanc number 9 nib, the Pelican number 8 nib, the Bach number 8 nib, you know, or the Pelican 1000. Those are all in the 8, 9 series sizing, and then you have, and then that number 50. You got well, the Mickey actually makes a number 20 nib, which I think that one's closer to the number 8 size, and then they have a number 30, which is just a little bit bigger. And then they have a number 50, which is a lot bigger. And then we have that Toma nib.
I've never seen a number 50 size.
Yeah, as Joe pointed out, is the Tomas are very springy, and so one of the things they actually have a very small nib slit on the newer ones because of how springy the nibs are.
Yeah.
Kind of a interesting proportions.
Well, I told the story here. The Sailor King of Pen nib only comes in medium and broad, and I asked Mike Masayama, why is that? And he says they tried making them in fine and extra fine, but people's hands are so heavy that the nib tip would start to flex one because they're 21 karat, one way or the other. So they would only make them now in broad or medium. He offered to grind one down for me, but I realized at that point that my writing was not as delicate as it should be. So
So what is the difference between the nib sizes? People rather have a number 5 or number 6 or a fine or a medium. Explain that a little bit.
Well, so there's not really a one size fits all in the categories. You can get a number 6 nib in gold that's super soft and springy, and you can get one that's very flexible. And so it's not super cookie cutter or cut and dry, so to speak, but there are, there's just different advantages. Like I mentioned earlier with the needle point, the people in the planner community that want to write really, really small, they're gonna enjoy that smaller nib, even if it may not feel as pleasant or it might be, not as smooth as a broad, but it gets the line that they need on the paper, and so they can, focus on that to make their, whatever they're they do various, either drawings or, or diagrams and stuff like that, and all kinds of planning. And, I'm not a planner, so I can't even, I can barely comprehend some of the stuff they're doing, but it's, but small, precise work, and then whereas, I think Trump was pretty famous for using a Sharpie to sign his name on all the documents that he signed, not to speak on politics, but it points out that some people want a big, broad signature nib. Mont Blanc makes their signature about a 6B, so there's kind of a nib size for everybody, so to speak, especially in today's fountain pen market.
then you have Sailor in their Nagahara series, right? The Naginatas, the
Right. Yes.
huge,
Yeah. The
massive-
Naganatas and the King Eagles and the.
Kirk, you said you dealt on the subject of Larry's size thing here. You said you have dealt with Bach, right? Now Bach doesn't use terms like 6 and 5. They use like 250. I guess they're talking about millimeters, maybe. I don't know. It's a different sizing system.
That's a good question. It's not 250 millimeters. I don't know.
I couldn't be. It couldn't be. That would be
No,
ridiculous. That'd be.
no,
that
'cause-
would-
well, right, and
I think about how big that would be. Yeah.
yeah,
Something. Yeah. It's different because I was looking to
But-
buy number 6.
right,
I found
Right.
out. I think I had to request a 250 or something like that.
right. Yeah, and so I kind of use them interchangeably. A lot of people do, but a Bach 250 is a number 6 nib and equivalent. You can't swap a Joe into a nib into a Bach nib, even though they're the same size, because there's a curve on the Joe nib. Now, but they are essentially the exact same size. Bach has some really weird numbering. Their number 5s actually come in what's called an 060, an 076, and a 180. So those are all 3 number 5 nibs, but they all have different shoulder widths and different other dimensions that set them apart from each other. So, and then their big number 8 nib is called a Bach 380. But yeah, generally speaking, if you're shopping my website or most anybody else's that has those items, you're going to see that it's going to have the number 380 or the number 250 and also the number 6 or number 8 to kind of help clarify what's
Kirk,
not.
the 380 is the number 8 size, right?
The 380 is the number 8 size, correct?
Hey, Kirk, does the Bach nib sections, are those Yoho nib sections and Bach nib sections interchangeable? I mean, do they have the same threads on them
They do not. They do not. They're
okay.
completely different threading.
So if you
So you can't swap the
pin with a
sections.
Bach nib and you want to replace the nib, you would just have to get another Bach nib section to go in it. Okay.
Essentially, yeah. There's some crossover, and like I mentioned, that a lot of the brands use Joe and Bach nibs. So you could, if you had an Esterbrook that you hated the nib on, you could actually get a 14 karat Leonardo nib and put it in your Esterbrook, and vice versa. And so there is a ton of crossover in that regard, but generally speaking, you can't put a Bach nib in a Joe nib pin and vice versa.
Mike, have you used any number 8 nibs in your pens? Any requests for that?
Oh yes. I've done a number of number 8 Bach nibs, and I've actually purchased them from Kirk in many cases.
I like the number 8 Bach better than I did number 8 Yovo.
I like the number 8s. I guess I would have to say that. I mean, and again, as Kirk has said, I mean, nibs are a very personal thing. How much springiness you want and how exactly smooth you want it. Some people like more feedback. So, I mean, it's hard to really say too much, but I do tend to be, I guess I would have to confess I'm a bit of a gold snob, like a lot of people. I do like gold nibs. I think it may be just psychological because I have steel nibs that write beautifully, that really are gorgeous nibs. There's nothing wrong with them. But I do also like the number 8s. They're bigger. I don't, bigger is better, maybe. I can't say. But, although, again, I can turn around, like Larry was saying, you can turn around and look at like the Pilot pen, the Vanishing Point. That's a fairly small nib, and I love my Vanishing Point, too. So I guess I'm, and I guess, again, kind of, it varies from person to person. I would say I probably don't have a really sensitive hand, so I kind of like a lot of different nibs. I mean, I don't have one particular style that I've stuck to, and I will have. We won't mention any names. I know you're out there. A couple of people have bought my pens and have gotten sections for all 3 of those. They get
Yeah, okay, I know, yeah.
on one pen, 3 sections. A Bach number 6, a Yovo number 6, and a Bach number 8. So they can, on that same pen, they can put whatever nib they want onto that pen. And actually, it's not that uncommon. A lot of times people want, like a Yovo or a Bach, and I'll do a section of each, and so they can switch
So,
between
Mike,
them
are you
without
going to,
getting stuck. Go ahead.
Mike, are you going to start putting gold nibs in your pens and just shipping them off for the same price?
Oh, well, no, I actually, yes, I will. It's really, it's up to Kirk. If Kirk will start sending me the gold nibs at the same price. I have here a gold, this is a YOLO
Well,
number
the
6
shipping
in
price.
gold. Okay. And it was a bit, to be honest, the gold nibs cost more than I could charge for my pens. Okay. Very often, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but they're, gold nibs are very expensive
Let me
nibs.
see if I
relatively
can see
speaking.
the stamp on this pen here.
Okay.
On this nib. Oh,
One's a
let me
box,
see.
I
Let
have
me
trouble
try my
seeing it,
glass.
Linus, even with the magnifier.
A 14
No, I
karat
can,
nib on here.
but,
Not
and
thinking
to be,
there is there, Mike.
well, no, it's like this here. I won't mention, I guess if you turn the label here, let me get in the camera here. You can see it's marked, okay. Can I get it focused? It says, I'll read it for you. It says 18K medium, and there's a name there.
Oh, the Mr. Announcer almost kind of thing. Not quite.
No,
but
almost Mr. Announcer. You're so close to Mr. Announcer.
Yeah,
It's not
maybe
Mr. Announcer. Okay. Yeah. So this is a pen, a custom pen that I'm working on right now, but it happens to have an 18K medium YOLO nib that I got. So.
Mike, have either you or Kirk seen this Bach nib? The slit is not a straight slit. It's a heartbeat.
Oh yeah, no, I've seen those. I don't have any, but I've seen them.
So what's the point there?
It's cool looking, Linus.
That's pretty,
Okay.
pretty.
Actually, no, what happened was Olga had a pen with that in it because I think her husband at the time suffered a heart attack.
Cardiologist.
Yeah.
No, it looked like a trace. It looked like an EKG kind of trace. Yeah. You can get all sorts of different customizations. I don't know, Kirk, do you do things like that where you cut different openings into the pens?
I do flexible nibs, but I don't do any kind of special.
No, I don't know how you would.
All right.
I don't even know
Not
how you use
affect
that,
the way that ink flows.
No, I wrote with the. I've had a few. I did nothing different about them for me.
Yeah.
But it's just a cool looking thing. That's all. It was, it's one of those things. Like it's cool. Like
So are you saying, Joe, that you got to have one, and then you have one, and then you sold it?
Oh, I've had several of them and sold them.
Exactly. You don't keep them for very long.
No, I get tired very quickly. It's why, guys, I'm still single. I don't know. But yeah, I thought they were pretty cool. They were pretty cool nibs. My favorite nib to look at, used to be the old Visconti nibs that was in that one picture. I love the way they looked, the way they were, two-toned. But to be honest with you, the Namiki Emperor nib, I could stare at that all day. It's like, it's so big it actually affects the gravity of the earth. It's just
Yeah.
Ironically, I have pretty big hands. Not long fingers, but big hands, and I prefer writing with smaller pens. I mainly use, as you guys know, a Sailor Pro Gear. That's the nib the pen I use the most. Whereas someone like Stephen Brown has monster hands, but he likes the huge pens like the Emperor, and was never comfortable writing with that pen. Beautiful nib, but never comfortable writing with it. It was like a bat with a nib on it. Beautiful nib.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would do another. While I'm still talking here a little bit, I will do a full disclosure that yes, I do use Kirk's nibs. I have them tune every nib I make. For every pen I make, I always give you a nib tuned by Kirk. So full disclosure, whatever you want to call that, right?
No, I think
that's really almost sounding like you're going to go into a song. Like it sounds like
I should do a song.
The hills are alive.
We could do a duet or something maybe, but
I can't
one
sing.
thing while you're talking about nib snobbery, another thing I've discovered recently, I bought some pens. I bought a couple pens. I won't say brand name or whatever, and they came with just off the shelf nibs. I think they were YOLO nibs, okay, and they were just off the shelf, nice nibs. They were just standard, what you'd expect to get in a pen. They were quite writable, but I've been getting so used to using Kirk's tuned nibs But
think you're better off doing
I
it.
found them disappointing. Okay. So I guess I've become a bit of a nib snob in that regard. Is that I haven't done. I've done a couple here and there of custom grinds, you know, like whatever, just to play with. But I think in general, you know, just having a tuned nib. I mean, you know, nothing wild. No, whatever. I won't even name nib grinds. I mean, just whatever. You know, whatever wild nib grind you could name, but a well-tuned medium nib. You know. I like that a lot. You know, it doesn't have to be, you know, whatever. I won't even, you know, oblique, and that, you know, architect, you know, whatever. I enjoy playing with some of those things, but you know, a really well-tuned nib, regardless of what it is, that I really like a medium or a fine, just really well-tuned, is such a joy to use. And I guess all of this is so subjective to everybody. So everybody has their own things. And I guess that's part of what I think, you know, one of Kirk's challenges is, you know, the best thing to do is actually just go to a show or go to one of his, you know, a store appearances and actually sit down and do that 30-minute or 15-minute per nib thing and go back and forth a little bit with, here, this is what I like, or he can look at the way you're writing, and you can get something that's tuned really to the way you write and get something you really like, you know? So I think that's really the best way to go.
Kirk, have you ever met the, I was about to say a patient, because what I'm about to ask you actually comes from the clinical realm.
Patient.
Is somebody you can't please. That causes dentists and physicians the most headache. The person that's just, I've had people come in, and thank God it doesn't happen much, but when I was in private practice, it looked like they gargled with acid. Then you fix it to, it looks beautiful, and they're sitting there with the mirror like this, going, wait a minute, hold on. This side of the tooth doesn't look right. I want to grab him by the neck and throw him out the window. It's like you come out, you know, it's like, what do you, and even though you know something, yeah, you could have screwed up, but you know when you didn't, the pen is tuned correctly. It's just not making the customer happy. You know, you ever have that happen to you?
You know, I've had it one time at a show where a guy just seemingly couldn't be pleased. And you know, I'm super stubborn, so I don't give up. So, you know, we used his time, and then I had him come back the next day, and we just worked on it. And, you know, and I spent way too much time with him, but it, you know, ultimately I was able to please him. But yeah, I think generally though, I think what we don't see it, I think, well, a couple things. People tend to find a nibmeister that tends to make the nibs the way they like them. You know, we each have like our personal bias, right? So I like my pilots and my Mont Blancs are kind of the premium of my collections and my personal collection. So I value that smooth writing experience. And so I tend to err on the side of what I think is smooth versus, you know, where somebody typically, you know, I want that sailor feedback in every pen that I get. They may not get that from me every time they get a pen. And so naturally, I think that you find that you know, not that I think most of us are capable of doing any grind for anybody, but I think, you know, we're more likely to hit the target for some people than others.
Right, I agree.
You know, consistently, if that makes sense. And so, so I think that what happens is you know, that person either, you know, after, you know, conversing with me, I try to make sure that people are comfortable and saying I don't like it. I want them to say, I love this pen. I love the way it writes now. I don't want them to be like, it's okay. Here's your money. I'm walking away. You know, I want people to be happy when they leave. And but I think that sometimes if there's people that just aren't, you know, they feel like they can't keep asking. And so they just right. Stop and they move on and they either find another nibmeister or whatever. So I think those kinds of things happen, you know, with me and with every other nibmeister, yeah. But it's not as openly seen as, you know, I think, you know, you as a dentist, I think that people are probably a lot less comfortable going, okay, I'll just go to a different dentist and get this work redone, right? So I think that
And they'll
that
tend to
happens,
complain to the front desk person, not to me.
but
But that was
right,
back when I was practicing back in the 90s.
sure.
But yeah, I was just curious. I mean, it's a similar thing. It comes down to the human interaction, and the same for you, Mike. If somebody gets a pen from you, they're not happy with something. It's how you deal with people. The current job I have now is, technical. I know certain things. Maybe my degrees help me, but in the end, I got to deal with a human being, and they have to deal with me. And so if you don't have that personable, somebody sees you in a show and they rub you the wrong way, it's kind of hard to work past that. It's just,
Sure.
have an amiable relationship with them. But
Yeah.
anyway, the human equation.
Yep. Yeah, in fact, I actually had a lady in Atlanta, and she goes, I need to get my Mont Blanc nib swapped, so I told her, well, that's not something I can do here. That's not something that anybody can really do for you. In order to get a Mont Blanc nib swapped, you actually have to deal with the Mont Blanc themselves and their shop, and most likely in Hamburg, Germany, and she's like, and just that response set her off somehow, and she was not happy with me, and she walked away, and but so you can't win every single one, but I think if you just generally kind of treat everybody as you would want to be treated, I think you can go a long ways.
Mike, do you get many people use your pens as eyedroppers?
Okay.
They're capable of it. I don't really, design them per se. And again, I've had a couple people that definitely were, are eyedroppering them. They're made the way I make them. Pretty much all of them can be eyedroppered. I don't put O-rings in, and I don't put in shutoff valves that I typically associate with an eyedropper pen, a real eyedropper pen, quote, quote.
Right.
But all of them can be, you could take any of them, like, here, and you could all you have to do is put a little, take out the converter. I'm not preaching the choir here, pop the converter and put a little silicone grease here to give you a little insurance on the threads. And you could eyedropper it, and you get a lot of capacity out of it. And I've measured it a couple times on some of the pens I've made just out of curiosity to see what kind of difference it makes to go from there to there, right? But personally, I don't tend to use that kind of thing, mainly because I have such an ink attention deficit disorder that I like to switch inks, and I don't want to commit to this many milliliters of ink, I can barely make it sometimes through converters, I want to move on now.
I never fill up my converters. I always dip my pens because
I always found it interesting about you.
Yeah. And when I first started using converters like this, I always had this, and I'm sure all of you, is it an OCD thing or whatever, where I would go up and down and up and down. I wanted it to be 99% full, right? All the time. I wanted this thing full. No
Not
bubbles.
only that, it's a pain to have to clean those things.
Yeah, it is.
Well, not just, but then as you were just saying, now I've gotten to the point where, if it's like half full, that's good enough for me now, because I'm likely not going to, I'll probably want to switch ink so it runs out anyway, right?
Yeah, that's me. I change my
That's where I am now.
ink preferences, as often as I change my pens, and that's frequently.
Right.
And I don't want to be filling.
Right.
I never, ever fill up my Pelicans at all, because they're too darn hard and difficult to get all the ink out of them again. So
that's why I have to leave it inked.
At least with the Pelican, you could unscrew that nib and really internally you could do that. But then you run the risk of screwing up the tune on the pen.
Yeah. I did take Dr. Joe's advice there, and I think for like almost 2 months, I just used his ink all the time. I filled a pen, Yamabudo all the way. And again, this is one of those things that everybody's, I had a pen. I won't. Well, you know, it was a
It was
Visconti. It was a Visconti. You know, which again, you know, that's a bugger to clean compared to converter pen. You know, where you can just pop it apart and flush it. Anything, you know, that is a much harder pen to clean. And there's certainly a certain beauty to, you know, oh, it's running dry. Click, click. Okay, now it's full again with Yamabudo. You know, keep going. You know. And
you know
never,
that is
never cleaned
Joe
it.
and Joe only that would do that.
Well, I did it for a couple months with that pen. I wrote almost exclusively with that pen with Yamabudo just to experience it. And you know, there's something to be said for that lifestyle.
I have pens in my case that have dried out with Yamabudo, and I'll just rehydrate them, rinse them once or twice, and then you could probably get me some ink usage out of it. I know people sometimes enjoy the whole process of taking a pen, cleaning it, filling it with ink, really using it, doing the same thing. I got no time for. I don't really. That to me is just. I much rather take the lazy route, you know, and just. I don't want to sit there and mess with fountain pens. I like writing with them. I like taking pictures of them, but not the whole mechanics of it. And I hate getting ink on my hands. That's why I usually use nitrile gloves when I'm changing my inks. Plus people see my hands. Oh, that's blood from the last patient. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
Dr.
I saw
Joe,
Kirk's
majority of
hands.
my pens that I carry are dedicated to one ink. My EDCs have one ink that has been in them pretty much from when I've gotten them.
Yeah. That's good.
So I know what's in it. The ones I change are my inexpensive Chinese pens that I don't fill completely.
Right.
So I can swap out those inks when I feel like a change. But my EDCs, like my Sailor has the same color. My Benus all have same ink. I mean, this one's had the same Thornton's Luxury Goods purple in it since I got it.
What is that pen?
That
Benu?
is a Benu
Yeah.
Minima,
Yeah. Okay.
and it's one of a kind.
For you.
For me, yes. I won this from them when they first started through Facebook. They did a giveaway.
Cool.
And it's one of a kind. So, but I carry it all the time. It always has Thornton's purple in it, and it never fails to write.
I think they use number 5 nibs in some of their pens.
Yeah, they
Yes.
did.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
And then I have the other
They use
two that
Schmidt
also
nibs.
never fail to write, that are also better.
I wish I knew where my vodka on the rocks was.
Did you misplace it, Linus? After all that time it took me to get you to buy one, you lost it?
I wouldn't say I lost it. It's just, you know, with
Misplaced.
moving, some pens are here and some are kind of there, and
You'll find it.
I think I know where it is, but I'm not sure.
Look
But
in the
yes,
liquor cabinet.
after all that time finally biting the bullet and buying the vodka on the rocks, yeah, I really need to locate it. By the way, Tina, did you get my letter the other day? I mean,
I
not the
did.
other,
I'm just
not
got a
the
little bit
other
of
day,
backlog.
but whatever.
It's
Pardon?
here. I just have a backlog. I'm working on
Not
it.
a problem. No, I just wanted to make sure you got it in the US of A.
Yes, and I kind of got behind because of my surgery on my knee.
And how are you
And
healing?
I'm doing really well, considering I went back to work after 8 days
Wow.
instead of 6 weeks like the doctor wanted. But yeah, I'm doing therapy 2-3 times a week and doing all my exercises, and I'm healing really well. I just can't bend it 90 degrees yet for long periods of time. But I'm walking with no crutches and doing pretty well.
Oh, that's great. And while we're on the subject of health, how are you, Mike?
I'm doing pretty good. Pretty good. Yeah, I actually, you know, if you follow me on Instagram or wherever, actually it's been about a month. I just finished this pen like a week ago or whatever, and it's probably been a month since I had done a pen before that.
Didn't you do one for Will?
Will's there. Yes, I am working on one for Will. Yes, I am. Yes, Will. I don't know if you want
Yeah,
everybody to know that,
I
but
think
yes, I'm
maybe the
working on
little
one
bird
for Will.
mentioned something a while,
Yeah, there's
Zoom or
a
two
there's a
ago.
couple pens back here on my bench here behind me that I should probably block, so you can't see them. But there's one for two people on this Zoom call have pens are represented by those two pens. So I have two custom
Oh,
pens
lucky
coming
of
right
me.
now.
Wow.
Oh,
Custom.
Yeah.
so that's
Larry,
Will
so
and
yes.
Larry. We know who that is,
Yes,
Will and
I guess
Larry.
we've kind of let the cat out of the bag then, haven't we? Yes. But anyway, no, as you living here in Minnesota, that we were going through the ice season, and so just at the end of February, I fell and broke my leg. So it was kind of not so much fun. It wasn't a serious thing, like I kind of just broke the top outer edge of the femur, the bone that goes up to your hip, that big guy. I just kind of broke the outer edge of it. So the load bearing portion of it was just fine. But that piece that sticks out, that's where all the muscles attached to move it. So everything was fine unless I tried to move the leg, is what it came down to.
Plus the covering,
I hear ya.
the covering of the bone, what's called the periosteum, is very innervated with nerves.
Right.
And
Right.
so
That's it. That's right.
Here
Right.
comes the doc.
Oh no.
Oh, hey, I rip teeth out of people's heads. I know a little bit about bone.
You know that, but yeah. Go ahead.
Mike, are you and Kirk going to work on some type of laser etch design for your nibs to brand your?
I've been, I've heard, he was saying, I got this laser, and I haven't seen anything on your website yet, Kirk. And because part of it is me, I haven't been going to a pen show to see what he's got, but I'd like to see your wolf nibs, So yeah, I definitely would like to do that.
I think Mike might be coming up with one soon.
Well, yeah,
Kirk helps him with it. Yeah.
Well, the problem here is, though, it's not him. Now, if that's, given that that's actually, he's not the only one, but I mean, the idea of, etching nibs and all that, the problem there is I have to actually come up with a logo if I'm going to do that, right?
Well, I have an idea I'll share with you and Kirk later. Thank you. We'll stop there.
I know what your idea is.
Did we not have a discussion about your logo, Mike Green?
Yeah, we've had discussions. You guys are trying to get me to do it.
Okay, let me get back.
Here it is. Hang on. Let me pin. I don't know if you guys, whoever's running this, guys, pin Kirk for a moment here. There he is. It's not
I need to get back on top of here, please, and we'll open it up. But
is that a cross?
That's a wolf there.
Yeah, it's not, your camera's not helping you much, but. Oh, bother.
I can't see it.
I see it now. Yeah. It helps a little bit, but it's not, nibs are hard to see sometimes.
It's really hard to see from there, but that's
all right. All right. Well,
I haven't actually tried to, sell any of these yet.
I know
at this point, but
I would.
Okay. Well, got a question back to Kirk, so we can finish this up. Kirk, titanium nib. You do a lot of titanium nibs. If so, are they a popular nib? Are they a difficult nib to work with versus the Visconti and the palladium nibs?
Good question.
So the palladium nibs are very similar to 14 karat and 18 karat nibs. There's a little bit of softness to them. The titanium nibs, however, like the number 6 or the Bach 250 titanium nib is in my opinion, kind of a deceptively bouncy, and I think a lot of people are tempted to flex them, and when they do, they end up, they'll flex for a minute and then they stop flexing and they just won't return. So unlike a 14 karat nib, that it doesn't have as much memory in the metal, and so you don't want to actually flex your titanium number 6 nibs. Now the number 8s, for whatever reason, are a little bit more rigid and a little bit more durable, I would say. So I tend to prefer and recommend the number 8 titanium nib as an option because it's significantly cheaper than the 14 or 18 karat number 8 nib. So, but as far as the number 6 size go, you either stick with a steel or upgrade to the gold. I tend to recommend against the titanium unless you're,
Hey, Kirk, do you tune titanium nibs?
I do. I tune them and customize them, and I repair a lot of them.
Do you tune those nibs? I think Shown Design. What do they call it? The Monarch.
Monarch. You know, I haven't had a Monarch on my table yet.
You haven't had the pleasure.
Work on. So I haven't had the pleasure. I've ridden with a couple at Ian's table. I've been, visiting with them, but I haven't tried to customize one yet.
Kirk, but can you actually heat modify that material like you can with ebonite? I know Mike Massiam would sink the nibs into like some hot water and just time and pressure just to get the thing to adapt better. I don't know if you can do that with Ultem.
With Ultem?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what the heat properties of Ultem are. Yeah, and I guess that would be a question for Ian as far as, he said, I don't heat set the feeds unless they need it. So I know that Mike does it on every single pin. But I find that at least for me and my process, it's not always necessary on a lot of nibs. So I don't take that step.
Yeah, and I don't think he would. I mean, you can't do it to everything, right? Because let the Namiki Emperor, the red one, has red urushi on the plastic.
You're right. Yeah,
I wouldn't sink that in the hot water.
I personally wouldn't want to do that to find out, but Mike definitely has many more years experience than I do, for sure. And I know he knows what he's doing in that regard as far as steaming, or heat treating.
Yeah, I see a whole bunch of them with clips hanging either into the water or just above it. But yeah, he's the guy I usually go to just because I'm a sailor guy. He was trained to be a sailor.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of. I've heard your name before. Bacchus as well, and I think Mark was the one who did the ASC pens, the Three Kings. I had them at one time. Set, and matter of fact, I still have the custom. I still have the custom leather case for it too, that I had made. But no, man, it's really interesting stuff, and I'm glad there are people out there that can tune these things. What's always disappointing though is if you spend $500, $1,000, $1,500 on a pen and it won't write correctly. I don't mind spending the $50 myself to get the thing tuned up, but you would think if you're gonna sell a pen, you'd be as conscientious as Mike is and have the pens checked out. Maybe they do, maybe I don't know, but I don't want to mention any names. I've had some pens well above the $1,500 mark that did not write well, and I had to have them tuned. And that's disappointing on many levels. So.
Right. Yeah, and I 100% agree with you. And that's actually kind of the door that I saw open in this industry was that, if I can, bring pins and offer them with tuning. So all the pins that I sell on my website come with complimentary tuning so that you can ensure that, whether it's a $50 pen or a $1,500 or a $5,000 pen, it's going to write, and I that was kind of, my big frustration whenever I first bought a nicer pen from a retail experience. And it's like, I don't want to ever do that again. So.
And I might have a little more demand on it in that, if you've ever seen my videos, anybody, I will test them out with offhand flourishing. Can the pen track the ink with the strokes I'm making? And by and large, most of them can. But there's been a few that you make the stroke, they the railroad, which will only be for flex, which I don't do anymore, or it would be that just the line just disappears. It runs out of ink as I'm going. And I don't write that fast. I'll make a stroke like that across the page, and most pens can keep up with it, but I've had a few that just disappears.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for a few more minutes. So if anybody wants to ask Kirk or Mike any questions, feel free to do so as of now, please.
I've got another question for Kirk. you were when you were showing us your pens, one of the things, it occurred to me, do you ever offer services to make pens, modify pens the way you modify them for yourself? Like, would you swap nibs for somebody or things like that? I know we're opening a can of worms.
That's a good question. I haven't really, like as far as putting Mont Blanc nibs and showing pens and stuff like that, I kind of hoard my my nibs as far as that goes. So I guess I haven't offered that to anybody else, but I suppose if somebody asked me, I probably do have at least a few 146 nibs that I would be willing to, help somebody acquire if they wanted to do that on a pen or something like that.
And somebody did mention it earlier. We are recording, right?
And then
okay, just want to make sure we're recording.
Right.
Go ahead.
And then
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
As far as the custom work, as far as the nib grinds, most of my nib grinds that I like are on my list of offerings, but there's definitely some that are more my speed that I don't foresee that anybody else would really appreciate, and so I don't, I'll show it to a rare person or so that express that kind of interest and see if they want something like that, but it will never be on my list of grinds, just because it's not.
There are people that do, is it bind work, BINDHE or something like that, where you change the barrel and the cap of the pen. And I know there was a gentleman I was put in touch with by a pretty famous person in the pen world. I was looking to have a 149 converted into Omas Arco Bronze celluloid. And I know they sell them, but when I got in touch with this guy, you thought this was espionage at the highest level. You want to talk to me, want to know who I was, what my background was. I'm like, pal, I'm asking about a freaking pen. You want if you want to have the CIA come, but though I did hear that somebody was doing Rodden work on Pelican pens, and Pelican contacted them, told them cease and desist, just because Pelican sells Rodden pens. Mont Blanc doesn't. I had a beautiful pen that was worked on in Japan that they did abalone inlays on for the 149. It was gorgeous. Sold that one too. But wow, what you thought it was a factory issued pen. That's how good the work was. I've seen others that were not as good. But yeah, this guy when I was speaking, I eventually didn't go any further with that. I was like, pal, this isn't worth my time and effort. But yeah, he thought it was just high level espionage.
Well, if it's Arco material, I know according to Manu, anybody who's got a rod of Arco has stolen it from him. So maybe that might be some of where he's being a little more on the shady side. Maybe he did steal it. I don't know.
I know of a few makers, a few folks that do have the material.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've lost my love of that stuff a long time ago. Beautiful, still a beautiful material, but I just
Anybody else? Kirk, anything that has some good information for people like myself that are unaware on nibs, ink, special inks, or the do's or don'ts?
You cut out a lot there, so I'm not sure exactly what you had, but I think you asked about any specific.
Are there any kind of inks that you would, in your opinion, wouldn't use on pens that you'd like to share, or some that you do love to use on pens?
Yeah, so there's definitely some inks that you want to avoid using, particularly with vintage pens. Some of them, if they're too basic, they will eat the sack. In a lever filler, or even that one that I showed you that has a little latex button on the end, that will get eaten up by the wrong inks. Specifically speaking, I can't necessarily say which brands, but one of my favorite brands, Iroshizuku, which is what I recommend everybody that has a modern pen have a bottle of Iroshizuku. I don't put Iroshizuku inks in any of my vintage pens, just because they tend to run on the basic side. You know, so, but that being said, I feel like Iroshizuku is the gold standard for modern pen inks. It's very consistent across the color lines. I have, you know, Yamabudo and Konpeki and a host of other colors in my pens. But it's kind of the one that I say that, you know, you can put that ink in your pen, and then if you're having problems, then you know that it's one of the issues is not the ink. The issue is it could be the paper, it could be the nib, could be the feed, could be a million other things, but one of the problems is eliminated in the ink, you know. And so I think that's, you know, having a quality ink that you can measure against and compare with your other pens and other inks, you know, is a good way to make sure, because there's kind of nothing worse than sending a pen to me because you know, put a terrible ink in it that wasn't right for any pen, you know.
Speaking of that, Kirk, what's your thoughts on these? There's a few companies that put out iron gall inks made for fountain pens. What are your thoughts on that?
You know,
don't do it.
I mean, definitely, I would be hesitant to put it on any of my pens that have steel nibs, for sure. Iron gall, steel. You know, and you can look back and look at, you know, some of the casualties of history. We look at the 90s Watermans and stuff like that had the gold plating and stuff like that, and whatever ink they were using at that time was eating the crap out of those nibs. And you know, same with, you know, Parker had those Solvex and they seem like they tried forever to find a right compound mix for their inks to get, you know, consistent good results out of it. So, you know, there's several different variations of vintage Parker inks that you should never put in anything really. But you know, I have a bottle of Waterman ink that's probably 80 years old that I still use. It's, you know, that ink has been classic and good and reliable. You know, and so that's actually probably my most commonly used ink for my vintage pens is my Waterman inks.
So anybody on this iron gall ink, I've heard the name mentioned, but I'm not even familiar with it. Is it a bad ink to use?
So iron gall's main advantage is that it makes the ink permanent.
I'm sorry, you broke up. What?
Iron gall makes the ink permanent.
Okay.
And so
my experience with iron gall is you can get it in kind of different colors and right, but when it dries, it basically turns black. And
really,
that's been my experience. And I guess that's what makes it so permanent, like Kirk says, or like a document ink, I believe.
Yeah, it was used in Germany up until the 80s for official, because when people were writing on calfskin vellum, because the ink is so acidic, it's a very acidic ink, it bites into the paper. But if I don't just talk about this is something I've experienced with from calligraphy and using dip pens. The ink is made with botanic acid as well as ferrous sulfate. And so when it's in solution, it's clear, you don't see anything. It's as it starts to dry out, the what they call it, the tannoferric pigment starts to form. And that does not go back into solution. People sometimes stir their inks. Don't stir that stuff. Decant off leave the stuff, throw it out, and put more ink in, and sometimes a little lemon drop for acidity. It requires lots of acidity for it to stay in solution. And I once in the lab had a bright idea of taking my little bottle and trying to pH it to neutral. All the iron pigment crashed out. I was essentially left with acid, in water, or acidic water. You can't do that with that ink. But I would never. I know I'm going to get in trouble for this. Let's just say, in my pens, I wouldn't use it in my fountain pens, because if that pigment crashes out or it comes out in that nib, unless you can disassemble the nib, you're not getting it out. It's like I have the same issue with the sparkly inks with the mica particles in them. Unless you get sent to Kirk and Kirk can disassemble a nib unit, It's going to go places. You'll never get to it. I mean,
Is it a popular ink?
What's that?
Is it a popular ink?
The calligraphy, where I used to use it a lot. When I was working on pieces that I wanted a really fine hairline, and it's crazy because the older inks that the penmen of let's say the turn of the century in the 1900s used, they would add aniline dye to it, so you get a little darkness so you can see what the heck you were writing. But if you don't put the dye in it, it goes on clear, and as it starts to dry, it starts to go blue-black. It's pretty impressive to watch, but it's kind of hard when you don't have any dye in it. So the legendary one here was Arnold's ink back in the turn of the 1900s. And I've seen bottles of that, and it's got a greenish tint to it because they used aniline dye, and that would start to go rogue at some point. It's the problem with some of the early fountain pen inks. They were organic dyes, and organic dyes don't last forever, at least in their actual original form. Yeah.
Anybody else want to interact with Kirk or Mike right now? 5 more minutes and we're going to wrap it up.
Geez, over 2 hours now.
That's doing good for me, please.
Very nice.
Try again.
Huh, everybody went silent. Wow, that cut the goose.
I'll just say it's been a pleasure speaking with you guys, and feel free to reach out to me. I'm on Instagram, and
thanks, first. Nice to meet you.
And my website is Penrealm. You can penrealm@gmail.com for email. So anytime anybody has any questions, I'm always happy to answer and tell you, honestly what I think about things. So sometimes to the detriment of my business.
Okay, before we go, Kirk, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can find me online on Instagram at Penrealm, penrealm.com for my website, and penrealm@gmail.com for email. So
Are you on Facebook?
very, very little. I'm very slow to respond on Facebook, but I am there.
Instagram is your main thing, right?
Instagram is the main social media portal that I use.
So when will the next show you'll be at?
Well, so I'll be going to Oblations in a couple of weeks, and then the Chicago Pen Show is next, around the 1st of May.
The 4th to the 7th.
Right.
Let's go to Mike real quick. Mike, you got anything to say before we leave, sir?
Well, first of all, thanks, Kirk, for being here. It's been very informative. And also I'll just throw in, if you go to Penrealm, you go to, where is it? Contact? I don't remember where it is. Shoot, I've lost it. But I've got it. You've got a page of upcoming events. Yeah. And it's under services. I don't remember where. It's under services. There it is. It's the first entry under services. And so you can always see where he's going to be. And Kirk is everywhere, by the way, just about. I know 16 out of 18 shows. And it seems like every weekend in between, like your family. You still have a family? No.
I think I do.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike. He don't. Hey, Mike. He don't live in Colorado. He just lands there occasionally.
I guess. Yeah. Bromgul's. Yeah. The Chicago Pen Show is like the next show. I'll be at the Chicago Pen Show as well. That's where I'll be. Again, if you go to my website, you can see where I'm going to be. This year, I'm expanding. I'm not going to do anything like Kirk's schedule, but I'm going to go to the Chicago Pen Show, the St. Louis Pen Show, the Pacific Northwest Pen Show, and the Dallas Pen Show. That's my plan this year. I'm going all the way up to 4 out of 18 shows.
Well, Mike, I'm a native up here, so if you or Kirk need anything while you're up here for Chicago, I'll be at the show, and you can just reach out.
Okay.
I live 15 minutes from the site.
Oh, great.
So
I posted the direct link to Kirk's page that lists where he's going to be in the chat section if you want to just click on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we're going to wrap it up. Hey, thank you, Kirk, for coming. I appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And I hope this answers a lot of people's questions. And Mike, thank you for also showing up and being supportive. And everybody else, thank you so much. Have a great day. Until next time. God bless. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Happy Easter.